Welcome to SS 5.1. We are talking about constructing and designing different rectangles given either the perimeter, the area, or both, and then drawing conclusions. So what that means is the question or the textbook is going to tell you what area you have to use or what perimeter you have to use, and then you have to figure out what that rectangle is going to look like. So indicator A says construct, and that means concretely, like you actually build it out of blocks or something, or pictorially, which means you just draw a picture of it. And then you record the dimensions, which is the length and the width, of two or more rectangles with a specified perimeter, meaning the book is going to tell you what the perimeter has to be. And then you have to figure out what dimensions would be most appropriate for a particular situation. So for example, they've said that perimeter has to be 18 units. What dimensions of all the possible rectangles could you have? So we'll get into that in just a minute. Next one says, critique the statement that a rectangle of 1 by 8 is different than a rectangle of 8 by 1. And we'll have a look at that in a minute too. The third one, construct, either concretely or pictorially, record the dimensions of as many rectangles as possible with a specified area. And I'm going to do an example that has 24 square units in it, and we'll show you how many different ones we can make out of that. D is very similar to B. Critique the statement, a rectangle with a dimension of 3 by 4 is different from a rectangle with a dimension of 2 by 5. So we'll have a look at that as well. E says generalize the pattern. So by looking at all these different rectangles, could you figure out that, and if you look at the area in red here, when you have a larger area, that doesn't always mean that you're going to have a larger perimeter because of the way that you can draw the rectangle, and vice versa. So what you should be able to generalize is right here. This is kind of the rule, that the rectangle that you make that is closest to a square is going to have the greatest area. So remember that. Whatever rectangle you make, if you can get the sides to be as close as possible to the same measurement, then that's the one that's going to have the biggest area. And then lastly, F, identify situations that are relevant to your life. So let's have a look. Okay, so here is Fluffy. He is in his dog kennel, and this is relevant to your life because many of you have a dog, and you might have to build him a kennel sometime. So let's have a look over here at the colored rectangles, and let's pretend that these are preliminary plans. We're planning out what Fluffy's kennel is going to look like. So if you notice, each one of these kennels, the orange one, the blue one, the yellow one, they all have the same area, because 1 times 30 equals 30, right? And so that would be 30 square meters. So let me try and put the little m and the little 2 up there. 30 meters squared. Well, 2 times 15 is also 30. 5 times 6 is also 30. And so you would have to look at your yard and think, well, these are all 30 meters square. And so Fluffy technically is getting the same amount of space, same amount of grass inside each one, but which one is better for him? So you might decide, well, I like this one because he really likes to run, and so he could run back and forth in there, and that would be great. Your mom might like this one best because it fits in beside the garage, and that would be a good shape for that space in the yard, who knows. And you might decide you like this one because it's actually the cheapest amount of fence. So let's have a look at this yellow square and just see how much fence we have to have. If one side is 5, so this side is going to be 5, and this side is going to be 6, we know that perimeter is, we're going to add all, look at handwriting, look at me go, all sides. Okay, whew, that was hard. We're going to add all the sides. So for perimeter, we're going to follow the recipe. We always drop down and we put the P right underneath, and then we put the equal sign just like the recipe up here told us to do. The sides in this case are 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6. There we go. So let's add in our heads here. 5 plus 5 is 10, that's right, and 6 and 6 is 12, so 10 plus 12, we have a perimeter of 22. So we would say, okay, Mom, I'm going to buy Fluffy some fence here. We're going to make this yellow rectangle over here in the yard. I need 22 meters of fencing, and that will give him an area of 30. That's not supposed to be a Z, that is supposed to be an equal sign. There. Okay, he will have an area of 30, and it's going to use up 22 meters of fencing. So let's go back up here and look at the orange fence that we originally said, oh, he wants to run. So we're going to build him this one. He's going to have the same amount of area. He still gets 30 square meters. But what is the perimeter going to be? Well, remember, perimeter is at all sides, so we would have to add 1 plus 1 plus 30 plus 30. Can you figure out the perimeter from that? P equals 1 plus 1 plus 30 plus 30. So the orange one would require quite a bit more fence, wouldn't it? 30 plus 30 is 60, and 2 more makes 62 meters of fence. So that would probably be more expensive then, right? So you might have to talk your mom into giving you more money. All right. If we look at these two little rectangles, we'll use a simpler example so that you can see that perimeter and area. So let's do perimeter in this blue box. Let's do area over here in the orange boxes. So we always start with a recipe. We always put down P equals add all the sides. This printing is painful. Okay. Okay, so we're going to add 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3. Awesome. I need to get like a pen thing. That'll be way cooler. All right, 2 plus 2 is 4. 3 plus 3 is 6. 4 plus 3 gives you a perimeter of 10. And we always put our units. We don't know what the units are in this case, so I'm just going to call them meters. And then over here, the formula for area is L times W, length times width. We always drop down and we put our A, and we always put our equals right underneath the equal sign. Keep it nice and neat, even with my crazy internet pen here. And we plug in our numbers. 2 times 3. Okay, folks, what's the area? What is 2 times 3? If you said 6, you are right. And we said it's meters, but this time there's 2 dimensions, and we're multiplying length times the width. So in perimeter, it's just a linear measurement of 10, right? We're going to go buy Fluffy 10 meters worth of fence. But in area, because there's 2 dimensions, we have to have the little exponent up here, 6 meters squared. That means we're not going to the store to buy 6 meters of fencing. That means we're going to go buy 6. There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're buying 6 square meters. So here's a meter. Here's a meter. Here's another square meter. Another square meter. 5 and 6 square meters. So area is a 2-dimensional thing. Perimeter is just linear. It's just a length. Okay, so let's see if you can figure out the perimeter of this shape right here. Each side is 5, so we know that this is a square. If we're going to add all the sides, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. If you said 20 meters, you are right. The area, look up here, length times width. So this time we're multiplying length times width. 5 times 5. If you said 25 meters, you're wrong. Because it's not 25 meters, it's 25 meters squared, which is completely different from 25 plain old linear meters. We're talking 2 dimensions when we're doing area. So don't forget the little exponent right there. All right, one of the outcomes says you have to critique the statement that a rectangle with a dimension of 1 by 8 is different from a rectangle with a dimension of 8 by 1. Well, if this is 1 and this is 8, how do you figure out the perimeter? We're going to add all the sides. 1 plus 1 plus 8 plus 8. So we know that 8 and 8 is 16, and 2 more is 18. Does it matter how we add them? Could I write perimeter equals 1 plus 8 plus 1 plus 8? That would give me 18. Does it matter if I put them in a different order? And I'm using this right here. And I say, well, it's 8 plus 8. I print like a child. 8 plus 8 plus 1 plus 1. You get the same answer. So you should be able to critique, that means discuss it and say whether it's true or not. Critique this statement. It doesn't matter how you put the rectangle. You could lay it down flat. You could twist it all around. As long as the sides are the same length as what you started with, it won't matter. Same with area, because 8 times 1 is 8, or 1 times 8 is 8. It doesn't matter. But just remember that this is units squared, and this is just units, because perimeter is just a linear measurement. How much fence do we need? And area is a square unit. This next one, this is kind of fun. It's like a puzzle. You can construct and record the dimensions of as many rectangles as possible with a specified area. Okay, so we know that area equals length times width. That's a great W. All right, and they've told us in here, if you look up at the green part there, the area has to be 24. Well, what are all the ways that we can make 24? What are all the factors that 24 has? And keep in mind, we're multiplying here. This is not adding, this is multiplying. So how to make 24? Well, I don't know, 1 times 24, that works. What about 2? Yep, 2 works, 2 times 12. What about 3? 3 times 8. What about 4? 4 times 6. What about 5? Nope, 5 doesn't work. 5 is not a factor of 24. And then there are no numbers between 4 and 6 that work, so we're done, because we could just keep going up the list. So here are all the ways that you can make an area of 24. So what would this dog fence look like? Well, it would be really skinny, 1 meter wide, 24 meters long. Oops. Something like that. Big skinny one. This would be slightly wider and exactly half that length, 2 by 12. This would be slightly wider, 3 by 8, and then this would be 4 by 6. And so all of these would have very different perimeters, because in this long skinny one, you're adding 1 plus 1 and 24 and 24, right? So 24 plus 24 is 48, 49, 50. This one would have a perimeter of 50. That would take a lot of fence to make that long skinny thing. Whereas down here on the bottom, you're adding 4 plus 6, which is 10, plus another 4, plus another 6. So here your perimeter is only 20. So if you're going to save some money on Fluffy's dog pen, go with that one. All right, and this is just the same thing over again. Patterns. Remember we talked about the pattern that just because it has a bigger area doesn't mean that it has a bigger perimeter. And the general rule here is that the rectangle that is closest to a square is going to have the greatest area, or the rectangle with the smallest width for a given perimeter will have the smallest area. So if this was our 1 by 24, and over here this one was, we'll say, 4 by 6. They're both going to have the same amount of area, but they have a different perimeter. If you gave a larger perimeter and said, I want a perimeter of 50, Mom has lots of money, so she's going to give me enough money to buy 50 meters of fence. So you could create different rectangles that add up to 50 that are completely different shapes. So, all right, let's go draw some rectangles. Don't forget to feed Fluffy.